Important. When I talk about information from graphs, guys, you guys are going to be given graphs, and you're going to have to give the information from it. We're going to talk about domain and range, intervals of increase, decrease, constant, and stuff like that. This graph here shows you X and Y values. It's talking about temperature versus time, right? You guys all know the answers to these questions. This is super, super basic. It's just to understand how the question is asking, or what the question is asking and how it's asking. When it tells you to find the values of the function from the graph, when they say find t of 1, t of 3, t of 5, they're giving you the x values they want you to look at. So they're saying, what is t of 1? What is t of 3? And what is t of 5? When x is 1, what is the value of y? So look, go on the x-axis where x is 1. What is the value of y? 25, right? That's all that's asking. What is t of 3? Is it 35? It's 30, okay. And then what is t of 5? 20. That's all that question is asking. It just looks a little different. When they tell you to compare which is larger in B, well, what's t of 2? We're going to compare t of 2 to t of 4. So look on the chart. Where t is 2, where your x value is 2, what is the y value? 35, okay. Where x is 4, what is your y value? 25. So the question is, which is larger? You would say t of 2 is larger. Does that make sense? When they give you a letter and then a number in parentheses, that's saying, hey, look on the x-axis, whatever this value is, and tell me what the y is. When it says find the values that are exactly 25, what are they? T of what? T of 1 and t of 4. Good. Whoops. Wrong parentheses. T of 4. Good. When it says greater than or equal to, what are the answers there? Greater than or equal to 25 would be where? T of 1. Where else? T of 2. T of 3. Agreed. And T of 4. Right? So if you're given a graph and it says, what is f of 9 or t of 6? That just means look at that number on the x-axis and tell me what the y value is. Does that make sense? All right, now I'm going to talk about some stuff that you guys have seen before, but we need to make sure we understand how to read graphs and what they're looking for. When we talk about domain and range, remind yourself, guys, domain is the x values on the x-axis, right? Domain is x values, and we read domain from left to right. You always start on the left-hand side, and you end on the right-hand side. Remember, if a dot is closed, that means the value is included. This means included. If it's an open circle, it's a parenthesis, and it's not included, remember? And then what do graphs that have arrows at the end mean? Keeps going on forever and ever and ever, right? So it could be positive or negative infinity. Very important that you guys understand that. They're going to have some graphs that have specific stopping and starting points and some that don't. When we talk about range are your y values. Range are y values. You read range from low to high, bottom to top, however you want to say it. Same thing goes for open and closed circles and infinities and stuff, but range is always from the bottom to the top on the y-axis. Everybody with me? Okay. Then we're going to talk about something called intervals of increase, decrease, and constants. All right, this is the part that can be a little confusing. You guys can all figure this out. It's just you have to pay attention to what you're doing. If I say something is increasing, what is it doing? It's going up, okay? So think about that. Literally going up. If I say something is decreasing, what is it doing? Going down, okay? So going down. What happens if something is constant? It stays the same. Good. So constant stays the same. All right, there's some very, very, very particular things for intervals of increase, decrease, and constant that you have to pay attention to, because if your notation is wrong, then your answer is wrong. It's not just like, oh, you can get partial credit for this. It's very, very important. When you are doing intervals of increase, decrease, and constant, you read it left to right on the x-axis. The y-axis does not matter. I don't care how high the function goes or how low it goes. We're talking about the interval over which it is going up or down. You're looking at just the x-axis. And we only, I'm going to say that 100 times, only use parentheses. Never a bracket. Because you cannot increase and decrease or increase and stay constant at the exact same time. It cannot, two things can't happen simultaneously. So intervals of increase, decrease, and constant, you're only using parentheses. If you put a bracket, it's wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a graph. We're going to cross off the y-axis where I'm going to look at it. And you guys are always going to start on the left-hand side. So if I started over here from A to B, you just put your pencil on it. What is happening from A to B? What's your function doing? It's increasing. So you guys would tell me it's increasing from this value to this value. Then you'd look at the next gap or the next piece and you'd say from here to here, what's it doing? Decreasing. So you would tell me it's decreasing from here to here. And then what does your function do again? It increases. It goes back up. So in this case, you have two intervals of increase and one interval of decrease. What would your interval of constant be? None. You don't have an area on this graph where it just stays flat. It doesn't go up any, it doesn't go down any. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work through a couple of examples and then look at some of the ones on your homework so we can just read the information from a graph. All right, look at this first one. Sure. Look at this first one. Just look at your graph for a second. Do you guys see any arrows at either ends? No. So we're not going to have any infinities. Okay, that's a good thing to look at. Remind yourself if you need to. I look at the x-axis here. The x-axis only, boys. X-axis only for intervals of increase, decrease, and constant. And I'm only going to use parentheses. Remind yourself so you don't forget. The only thing we look at the y-axis for is the range. But let's look at our domain. Domain is the furthest left to the furthest right. So the furthest left that I use is what x value? What is that number? -8. Okay, does it include -8? Yeah. Yes. So I'm going to say bracket -8 to the furthest right. When I look all the way over here, what is this value on the x-axis? +8. Does it include it? No. So it would be 8 with a parenthesis. I have a closed bracket on -8, but an open bracket, or an open, closed bracket because of the closed dot on -8. And I have an open dot on +8, so it's going to be a parenthesis. So my range is the lowest to the highest. What is the lowest value that is on this graph? -6. Does it include it? Yep. So -6 to, what's the highest on this graph? +5. Does it include it? Yes. Okay, good. I think we've done domain and range a lot. You guys have seen domain and range a lot. Should be a little bit of a review. But now we're going to go to our intervals of increase, decrease, and constant. Every single time I do this, even when I make your answer keys, I will do this exact same thing. I'm going to take my y-axis, and I don't want to look at it. Remind yourself, I don't look at the y. If there's numbers there, cross them off. I don't care. I'm not asking you how high this function goes or how low it goes. We're looking from left to right over the intervals of where it increases and decreases. Yeah.
Are we going to be saying like point A, point B, or are we not?
No, you're going to use numbers, yeah. That's why I didn't really go into too much depth on that one. So let's look at this. If you start over here on the furthest left-hand side, from here to here, what is your graph doing? It's increasing. So look, actually draw an arrow. It's increasing from here to here on the x-axis. Draw it to the x-axis because that's the interval over which it's happening. So it's from where to where? Negative what to negative what? It's increasing from -8 to where? -4. I agree. Perfect. So now look at this next little piece. What's going on from here to here? It's going which direction? It's decreasing from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? It's decreasing from -4 to -1. Very common mistake is you guys tell me on the y. From 3 to -1, it's going downward. I agree, on the y-axis, it's going down that much, but we're not looking at how high or how low. We're looking at the interval over which it's happening. So now if I look at my graph again, I'm going to put my pencil right here, and I'm going to follow. What's it doing? It's going up. It's increasing from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? -1 to +4. So it's increasing from -1 to +4. If you want to put a union there, you can. You can have at 2 or 3 intervals of increase, 2 or 3 decrease. You can have none of something. So what's happening here at the end? It's going down. It's decreasing from where to where? From 4 to 8, right? So it's decreasing again from 4 to 8. Again, you're only using parentheses. What happens, what do I put where it's constant? Is there an area on this graph that just stayed flat left to right? No, so your answer for constant would be none. You can write no constant, whatever. Don't leave it blank, because then I just think that you don't understand what constant means. But there could be no areas of increase or no areas of decrease or whatever. If there isn't one, then just put none. Does that make sense? Yeah.
All right, that's what we got.
No. You do for domain and range if there's a break or something, but not for areas of increase, decrease. All right, let's look at these two examples. Let's compare these two graphs for a second, and we'll do them both. What do you notice the differences are in the first one and the second one? One of them is there's a constant. Okay, there's constants. What else do you notice? One of them is continuous, right?
One of them is altogether.
And then there's one of them that's got some breaks. The one that has the breaks is a little harder to read, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the one that has breaks, that means you're going to have gaps. You're going to have some areas where either x values and or y values are not being used. I'll show you how to look at that. But if we look at this top one, all right, I would suggest that you guys get in the habit of saying, okay, intervals of increase, decrease, constant, x-axis, and just use parentheses. Remind yourself of that. Domain is going to be x from left to right, and range is going to be y from bottom to top. Low to high, however you want to say it. So if we're going to find our domain, my domain, the furthest left that I go is right there. What is that number? -8. Is it included or not? How do you know it's not? Because it's open. Good. So -8. There's no breaks. It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes to what?
Infinity.
Infinity. How come you guys didn't tell me negative infinity? Because the graph's going down. Because we're only looking, guys, from left to right. Negative infinity on the x is on the left. Positive infinity is on the right. Yes, I agree that graph is going downwards, but that would affect our range, not our domain. So if we're talking about range, range is the lowest that this graph goes to the highest. Well, if this continues on forever and ever and ever, where does this graph start if I start at the bottom? Negative infinity, good. And it goes all the way up to what number? 1, 2, 3, 4, +5. Does it include 5? Why not? Because the circle's open. Does anybody have any questions about that? You should survey your graph. At the beginning, you should look and be like, okay, I have an arrow. That means I'm going to have infinity of some sort. Not sure where, but I'm going to have some infinity somewhere, so I pay attention to that. Now when we talk about increase, decrease, constant, we only look at what axis? The x. So go ahead and draw, just go like this, like, ooh, don't look at here. It doesn't matter what's on here. Don't look there. The only thing that matters is left to right. So if I put my pencil here on the left-hand side, What's going on right here? It's decreasing. So from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis is it decreasing? -8 to -2. -8 to -2. If you guys have questions, you need to stop me as we go through this. So I'm going to continue on my graph. From here to here, what is the graph doing? It's increasing. It's going up. So from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? -2 to +1. So it's increasing. -2, +1. All right, keep moving along. Left to right. What's going on from here to here? It's staying the same. It's constant. So it's constant from where to where? 1 to 4. Good. Constant from 1 to 4. Perfect. And then I still have another piece of my graph that I have to look at. What's it doing from here to here? From 4 to what?
Infinity.
Good. Very good. Positive infinity, because we're only looking at what axis? The x. So it's decreasing again from 4 to positive infinity. We're looking at the x-axis only. Now, if I answer these two questions here, what's f of -6 and what's f of 5? That question is saying, when I look at -6, so when I go over where x is -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what is the y value right there? 2. So f of -6 equals 2. F of 5, what does that equal? Well, I go over here to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's that value? +2. And that's okay. All right, questions? It's kind of a long process. You guys aren't adding and subtracting and multiplying a lot of big numbers here. This can be very confusing if you don't pay attention. There's not a lot of partial credit that I can give you, so you've got to make sure you understand what you're doing. Now, when you have breaks, when you have gaps, this is really, really important to look at, guys. Watch. Do you guys see this first break right here, this gap? Are there, in where I'm highlighting in purple, are there any x values that exist on the graph there?
X values, yes.
X values? Are there any x values that exist here? So you're going to have breaks in your domain. You're going to have from here to here and then union from here to here because there's no values there. If you look at the y, there is a break right here, right? But if I continue over here, is there a break on the right-hand side? No. There's a break right here, right? But if I keep coloring over here, are there values that exist over there? So do you guys see? This is why I think colored pencils are great and that sort of thing. Do you see why there's breaks in the domain, but there's not in the range? Just because there's no values here on my graph, there are some right there. Just because there's none here, when I go over, there's some there. But if I look up and down vertically, there are no x values being used in that area. That's why there's a break. Same thing here. There's no x values there. That's why it's a break. Yeah.
If there's a break, we substitute you need between the
For domain and range, yeah. Yeah. Good question. So let's do that right now. Let's look at our domain and our range. Okay, domain is going to be left to right. Guys, if you draw arrows, it makes it very, very obvious of what values are there and what are not. Your domain exists from where to where? -10 to what? Okay, does it include -10? No. Does it include -5? Yes. All right, then there's a break. There's a gap. When we did our inequalities and our graphing and our interval notation where there was a break, we put a U. Where does the domain pick up again? -3, and it goes all the way over to +5. Okay, does it include -3?
Yes.
Yes. Does it include 5? Okay, good. So then there's another break. Where does it pick up again? 7. It goes to what? Where'd you get infinity? Because of the arrow. Does it include 7? Yes, and the infinity has a parenthesis. Very good. We read left to right. Anywhere there's a gap, where there's absolutely nothing, then you would put your union sign if there's a break. So now let's look at our range. Our range is the lowest to the highest. What is the lowest value on this graph? What's the lowest value right there? -4. Does it include -4? Does it? Do you see a big point? No. But does the graph exist right there? Yeah, so there's a point there. So then I go up and I say, oh, there's nothing right here. But when I look over here, oh, there's values on that side. So it still exists there. Here, there's no values here. But when I look over here, there's values there. So what's the highest value that this graph uses? Positive what? 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, positive 8. Does it include it or not? No. But there are no gaps. There's no place where parts of that graph doesn't exist. It may not be continuous. It may exist on one side but not the other, but there's no part where there's no break for any y values. Yes, ma'am? Because, good question. Right here, there's a bracket. Do you see that the graph exists right here? Right? So in order to draw this graph, it's just made up of a whole bunch of points, right? So if there's a solid line right here, that means there's a point there that the graph goes through. If it didn't exist, it'd be like a big circle like that, and it would be open, like there'd be like a hole. Good question. All right, so now let's talk about our increase, decrease, and constant. Just look at your graph for a second. Do you have areas of increase? Are there areas where your graph goes up? Yeah. Are there areas where your graph goes down? Yes. Are there areas where your graph stays flat, constant? Yes. So you're going to have answers for all of these. So let's just look from left to right. On the left-hand side here, what is your graph doing here? It's going down. It's decreasing. So we would say it's decreasing from where to where on the x-axis? -10 to -5. -10 to -5. Remember, increase, decrease, constant. X-axis and parentheses only. So then I pick up my pencil and I look at the next piece of my graph. What's happening from here to here? What's happening in the next piece? It's going down again. From where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From -3 to 0. Don't look at the y, guys. It's decreasing again from -3 to 0. You do not need to put a union. If you do, it's no big deal. That's fine. But you don't have to. Very common mistake is to tell me it's decreasing from 1 to -4, which I agree it is. But we're looking for the interval over which it's happening, not how much it actually increases or decreases. Question?
I'm confused what you cut the parabola in half.
What, I do what?
Like cut the parabola in half.
Because what happens here, it changes direction, right? It starts to go which way? Then it starts to increase. So it's not a decrease anymore. It starts to increase. It goes up. Where does it start to increase from? Where to where? 0 to 5. And then what happens from here to there? It stays constant. From where to where?
From 7 to infinity.
From 7 to infinity. Good. I cannot impress upon you enough the importance of ignoring the y-axis. Everything for interval of increase, decrease, and constant is based upon the x-axis. From where to where is your graph increasing? From where to where is your graph decreasing? Very, very important. Sure. If you guys go now, I'm going to do some of your homework problems with you. Oh, wait, let me finish this. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. If you answer the questions f of -9, what does that mean? Where x is -9, where x is -9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What is your y value? What is it?
7.
+7, so x equals 7. F of 0, that means where x is 0, what is your y value? What kind of 4? -4. And then f of 4, go over to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is your y value right there? 2. When they ask you f of a number, they're saying, look at that number on the x-axis and tell me what the y value is at that point. Everybody with me? Okay, go ahead to your homework. It's 2.3 practice. Go ahead and pull it up. I'm going to do a couple of these with you now. And then if you guys notice, on the first sheet is just our increase, decrease, constant, domain and range. And then the second page has two piecewise to practice. We're going to go over this tomorrow in class. And then you guys, I posted the review already, so you can start the review if you want to. But go ahead and pull this up so we can look at some of the questions. So if we look at number 1. First of all, do I have any infinities? No, I have specific starting and stopping points. That's super important. So your domain is going to be left to right. What is the furthest left value? -2. And what's the furthest right value? +2. Does it include those? Yes. So your domain would be bracket, -2, +2, bracket. Includes both of them. Good. Now the range. I know this graph is a little different. Again, it'll be prettier on your test. But what's the lowest point on this graph? Say like negative half. Okay, that's fine. If you said -1, I would not mark it wrong. You understand it's below 0. That's fine. The graph is just not perfect. But it's negative, we'll say a half. Does it include it? Yep. And it goes all the way up to what number? 8. Does it include 8? Okay, perfect. Good job. Now, these are the type graphs that I tell you it's beneficial to you to cross off the y-axis. Because a lot of you will tell me that it's decreasing from 8 to like -1. And that's not true. I mean, it is true. The values are on your y getting smaller from 8. But we're talking about the interval over which it's happening. So go ahead and just cross off these numbers. Don't even look at them. You do not need the y-axis for our intervals of increase, decrease, constant. If I start on the left-hand side, what is happening to my graph when I start up at that top point? I follow it. It's going which direction? Down. It's decreasing from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From -2 to about -1, right? If you put -1.25, whatever. But we'll say -1-ish. Okay, on your test, it'll be prettier. And then what happens? What does your graph decide to do? It changes direction. It goes where? Up. From where to where? -1-ish to 0. -1-ish to 0. Agreed. And then what does it decide to do again? It goes down. So it decreases again from where? From 0 to where? To 1-ish. Okay, agreed. And then what does it decide to do? Go back up. From where to where? From 1-ish to 2. Now, what do you notice you didn't write? Constant. Is there an area that your graph stays nice and flat? No. So your answer for constant would be none or no. NA. Don't just leave it blank. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Zoom in. Yep. All right, look at the second graph. What do you notice about the ends of this graph? There's arrows on both ends. That means it's forever going to get longer and it's forever going to get wider. So what's your domain and your range for this? -infinity to +infinity for both. Good. Very good. So remind yourself again, intervals of increase, decrease, constant. It's the x-axis only, so cross off those y values that we don't want them. And remember, this is -infinity over here. This is +infinity over here. So what is happening here? Decreasing. From where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From -infinity to negative what? -3. Good. It's decreasing from -infinity to -3. And then what does your graph decide to do? It decides to change direction. It goes up. From where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From -3 to about -0.5? Okay. So, yeah, you can just put -1, that's fine. Look, it's increasing, guys, from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis, not the y. It's increasing from -3 to about -0.5. -3 to about -1/2. That's why I'm doing these with you, because these are iffy. And then what does your graph decide to do? It decides to decrease from where on the x-axis, -1/2, to where on the x-axis? Positive infinity. From -1/2 to positive infinity. I understand it's going down, but that's the y-axis. As it goes downwards to infinity, it's continuing to use x values that keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What is your area of constant in this question? None. There is none. All right, this takes some practice. That's why we're doing this. I can keep going. Let's look at number 3. What do you guys notice about 3? There's closed circles. Good. Do you have any arrows? No. What can you answer right away? Not even that. Before even looking at numbers or anything, what can you answer right away? The constant. What is it, Bella? There's none. There's no place on this graph that just stays nice and pretty and flat. So let's talk about our domain. What is my domain here? It's negative what to what? I'm sorry, positive what to what? 1 to what? Includes or not? Perfect. What's my range? What's the lowest this bad boy goes to the highest? -6 to 3. Include or not? Good. All right, now here's where we make mistakes. So let's cross off. Remind yourself, do not look at that y-axis. I don't want it. I don't care how high and low it goes. I want to know the intervals over which it's happening. So if I put my pen right here on my graph and I follow it downwards, what is it doing? It's decreasing from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From 1 to 3. From 1 to 3, it's decreasing. So from 1 to 3. God bless you. Then it changes direction, starts to go which way? Up. From where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? 3 to 5. Good. I'm telling you guys, those arrows will help you a lot. Arrows will help you a lot. All right, let's look at the next one. What can I put no to? Constant. There's no constant. What is my domain? 2 to 7. How'd you get that? Left to right. 2 to 7. Good. Left to right. What is the range? -6 to -1. Agree or disagree? -6 to -1. Look, the lowest this goes is -6. The highest it goes is -1. Good. So now we talk about increase and decrease. What is happening on this left-hand side over here? From here to here, what's your graph doing? It's going up. It's increasing from where on the x-axis to where on the x-axis? From 2 to 4. It's increasing from 2 to 4. Great. And then what does it do? It decreases from 4 to 7. Great. Very good, guys. Very good. Very good. Very good. What's your domain and range for 5 and 6? -infinity to positive infinity. Okay, good. All right, so you guys finish this. There's piecewise on the back. We're going to do that. I'll go through the piecewise tomorrow with you. But this is due tomorrow morning. I've done half of it. Huh? Yeah, that's due as well. You guys are going to do it on your own.